Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Purpose Refined by Fire. We are going to actually have to do something just a little bit differently because we're going to see exactly how this works. You know, the devil is always busy doing something, and I don't know what the devil is doing, but I'm going to tell you right now, um, this is not the way this is supposed to go. Because tonight, I had the most amazing opportunity, and I still do, and we're going to figure this out in just a second. But my pastor, my leader, Pastor Eugene Smith of the City of Life Ministries, Augusta Incorporated, is going to talk with me tonight about mentoring, about men, and about progress. And I'm so excited, but we're having some technical difficulties. So, what I'm going to do is I'm hoping that as soon as I add this man to the stage, everything is going to work the way that it's supposed to work. So, what we going to do is we're going to add him to the stage, and if that don't work, I got to work around because we're going to do it another way, always. So with no more fanfare, let me go ahead and bring to the stage Pastor G. For those of y'all who know, you know. For those of you who don't know, you're about to learn. So let me introduce to some and present to others none other than Pastor Eugene Smith.
Hey, what's going on, Doc? How are you?
That's what I wanted to hear. You are good to go, kind sir.
All right.
You are good to go.
I have a quick question before we get started.
Yes, sir.
Where does this stream live?
This is actually streaming to a couple of platforms. It is streaming to Purpose Refined by Fire on the YouTube network. It is also streaming to um, my personal Facebook page. And if you want to, you can go ahead and click that little button in the upper right hand corner, and you can go ahead and stream it to your Facebook page and
Yeah,
your Instagram.
I'm streaming it right now. I got an echo in the back there.
Let me see what I can do about that. I don't want to do that. I do want to do that. Let's see if that helps. Does that help any, sir?
Let's see. Yep. Well, I'm still bouncing back.
Do you have more than one device on, kind sir?
I do not. Not that I know of. So let me turn everything off so we can have this good conversation. Just in case. Hey, it's still giving feedback, but I'm good.
Well, I so apologize. I have reduced everything I know how to reduce on my end. Let me click one more button. Do that. That's what I don't want to do. Well, I tell you what. We're gonna see what we can do, and we gonna see what we can do. And once we do that, then we're gonna figure it out. Before I forget, by all means, go ahead and like, subscribe, and go ahead and share this with some because we're just getting started. And I know that this is going to be a dynamic time in God. And I really want specifically men, but people to get this message. I want them to get it. 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 And Prophetess thinks she's slick. Just going ahead and taking your pillows, her pillows, and everybody else's pillows so she can be comfortable. Bless you, Prophetess. So when I asked Pastor G to be on this platform, I did so knowing a couple of things in advance. The first thing that I knew in advance was he is launching big things. So, what I would like us to start with, Pastor G, if you don't mind, tell us about what it is that you've got going on. Because when I tell you you've been a busy man of late, you've been a busy, busy man. So tell us what you're doing and what's going on.
Yeah, so the main thing that I've been and I've really been led to do is to coach people, especially in the area of mindset and mind. And I was pushed to do that while I'm renewing my own mind, learning things about myself. I'm learning what motivates me and how to be motivated, how to be coached. And somehow or another, I found myself, and I know people call me Pastor G, but I done found myself as Coach G. And I dare say it was an accident because I do realize that God put us in some areas that seem to be peculiar for us. But at the same time, it's what we've been doing all along is now formatting. And so I am launching almost like a mindset school to help people to free their mind, much like a personal trainer would in the gym. I want to get in the gym of your mind and help you to break the chains that are keeping us from being great.
And how do folks get involved with that? If that's what, if that is resonating in their spirit, what do they do?
Yep. So it's one word that I've had people sending me by inbox, and that word is maximize. And so you go to my Facebook page, on my TikTok page, just send me a message that says maximize. That is the key that gets you the rest of the information. And at that point, we do a free assessment, find out where you are. And I actually got a special of a low price. It's not the price that it would be, kind of slashed in half to get started. Because I believe there's some people out there who want to go to the next level. And I also believe I'm that coach to help them get there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we're going to dive into this topic tonight because I'm not going to keep you long, but I'm going to keep you long enough, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
So, the first question I'm going to ask you, which is just a real simple question, is how do you define a mentor?
So, in the simple term, a mentor is a helper, a guide. I hate to say a role model. And Doc, if I'll be honest with you, even with the young men I deal with every day with the Department of Juvenile Justice, one of the questions that we ask and then return to the community is, would you like a mentor? And a lot of them say, well, I don't need nobody to tell me what to do. Or I got it. Or I'm good. And the response that I always give them is, listen, I'm 45 years old. I have 7 children, 5 of them being boys. And I have several mentors. Because I realize that even myself needs someone to help me be guided through this journey called life.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. So, why do men need mentors?
Why do men need mentors? So the reality is, and I had this conversation with my wife probably several months ago about what does it take to be a man, and how people will say, well, a woman can't raise a man. Now, I have a rather maybe different mentality, because what we say is a woman can't raise a man, so a man has to raise a man. But in reality, there's a lot of men that don't have to raise men.
It's absolutely true.
Because a lot of us was raised by our grandparents or our mothers who did awesome jobs with us. But the question then becomes, what does it mean to be a man? Is it simply going to work? What's the responsibility? What's the level of accountability? And what does that mean? And so the reason why we need guidance and mentors is because we can get to the age of 50 or even 60 and look back at our life and not really have achieved those things that are important to manhood. So we need somebody to help guide us through. whether we're
Absolutely.
4 or 40.
So you stuck on something that is at the crux of what I call the manhood issue. Now,
Yeah,
TD
yeah.
Jakes back in the day used to have an amazing conference called Manpower, and men from the nations descended on different locations. It was in Atlanta for a little bit, it was in Texas for a little bit, it was in some other locations. And men of God from around the globe came to impart knowledge to these conference attendees, because what you've just said was so confusing, and that was, we don't know how to be a man.
Yeah.
We have been confused from the time that we were raised, because the things that our role models showed us were not necessarily productive. They told us, don't cry. Men don't cry. That's a lie. They told us, don't show emotions of any kind. That's a lie. They told us that we don't need anybody. We can do it by ourselves. That's a lie. They told us that you gonna find a way to get over. That's a double lie. So by the time that a boy progresses into his teen years, he has 3 or 4 different worlds pulling at him, trying to say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is the model. This is the model. And to be very honest with you, the confusion that still persists is a remnant of the fact that we have never had a definition of manhood. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Pastor, as you knew I would. Go ahead and give us that good recipe for manhood.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure there's a clear definitive answer, right? I have a friend who, for him, manhood is taking care of the bills and making sure his family is covered. If we go to Maslow, Maslow would talk about safety and security. And that's important, right? Because if I'm not safe and secure,
That's right.
so my friend is however, if I have children, especially if I have a daughter, if I have a wife, I still have to be able to secure the emotional side of that woman or of that female. Which is where again things become difficult because nobody's taught us how to do that. And so on one hand, yes, it does have to do with safety and security, but it also has to do with being emotionally stable and grounded enough to handle the things that a man has to handle beyond money, beyond being able to pay, beyond being able to make burst into your house. And if I be honest, that's a tough lesson. Because again, even growing up myself, my grandfather was there. He worked. He worked 3 jobs, so he wasn't there. We didn't go lacking for anything, but I really didn't see a man from the home.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I would define it may be very idealistic, but it's not because I had it around me. Now, if I'll be honest with you, Doc, also, I could have a man around me every day, and that still might not be the man I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to navigate this world called manhood, and I feel like we're trying to figure out what that definition is until we leave here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Let me tie that back to the topic of tonight. So, how do men find mentors? How do they find role models? How do they find those qualities that they feel okay adding to their arsenal? How do they
Yeah.
do all
So
those things?
that's a great question. So let me what I really want us to even think about writing about as we move forward in this discussion even beyond here is first being a male. Because there's certain qualities that just a male has. Then being a man, then being a father, because it's still foundational. I say that because even if you take any child anywhere, many times we know who our mother is, but there's something in us that's looking at male figure. So how do I find? For me, as I was growing up, my dad was not around. There would be who I call now mentors. That it was something in them that I was looking for in the father that I could provide.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in them. And I can tell you guys about my first mentor. Ironically enough, and he just passed away a couple months ago. His name was Edward Smith. My name is Eugene Smith. So even that alone, it was like, okay, E. Smith. Took to him. He would take us to the gym. He would take care of us. He was a principal. Watch this, Doc. I found out later when I went to school, he helped me get to Voorhees College. He was an alpha man. He never told me. He just exemplified a great man.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came time for me to come into a fraternity, I saw the rest of it. But my mentor, the one that planted into me, was who I followed. Had it not been for him, I wouldn't have thought about college. I wouldn't have thought we wouldn't be sitting here talking. But it was something in him that I desired. And so you'll always hear people say the mentee chases the mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something in that mentor that I need. And once I realize that I need it and you have it, I'm unrelenting until I get it.
That's good stuff. That's
And
good.
there's another side of that conversation, if I can.
Oh, please.
The young men I deal with want it, but they resist. Because now, if another man comes challenge, I don't know how to take it.
Mm.
So when I ask them if they want a mentor, guess what they tell me? I want a mentor, but I want it to be a female. They don't want male mentors because that's going to be a class. That's going to be a challenge to me. But when you realize that it's something in a Dr. Mason that I need, it no longer becomes a challenge. It becomes, I need that. And so we don't like this word, so I submit to what I need. But a lot of our young people won't do that because I already feel like I'm a man.
You have now opened up Pandora's box.
I know
And
it.
you know I got to go there. Why are men in conflict with one another? What is this thing that says I can work with you on a project, but I'm never gonna let you inside my gates? I'm so sorry. I can let a woman inside my gates, but I can't let you inside my gates because you're not supposed to know that I am hurt. You're not supposed to know that I bleed. You're not supposed to know that I cry. And I'm sorry. You brought it up. So forgive me. But we gonna deal with that.
Deal with it.
we gonna deal with that one right
Deal with
there.
it. Yeah. Why the conflict?
Why the conflict?
So for me, and I'm saying for me, fear always lurks. And the biggest fear we have is a fear of the unknown. Here's the problem. Sometimes I fear the unknown based on what I know. What do you mean, Pastor G? Pastor G was 10 years old, standing at the door, waiting for Eugene Jr. to come get him. He never came. Pastor G went about his life. He went to college. First year in college, not only did he not come, but that's when he passed away. Everything dealing with, and if not everything, a majority has ended up causing her pain. So if I let you in to this painful place, there's a possibility and a fear that there may be more pain. We were going around our church. Always come out, a hug to all our elders and our leaders. And I got the one leader to hug him. They're gonna get me because I keep using. And I said, "Wow, we don't even know how to hug each other as men." Because it was like, what we do? We shake. It's all again a fear of what is this going to feel like? Is it okay? And so we put these barriers up. And in all reality, it keeps us from being healed. But if I may, it also keeps us hurt. And so it's like Jericho. The walls are set up, nothing getting in, nothing getting out. And so I believe that even as we begin to build programs for men, first thing we got to do is break down some walls.
Mm-hmm.
And the wall of
fear. The military term for that is a siege.
Yeah.
That's what the military term for that is.
Yeah.
Nothing in, nothing out.
That's right.
That city is under siege. That man is under siege.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I absolutely wanted to ask you tonight was men often carry hurt, pain, and trauma. How do we deal with those inner issues when a man is under siege?
Yeah.
What is the strategy for our personal Jericho walls? Because they are reinforced.
Yeah.
And we're sitting on top of the wall looking at folks just circling.
Yeah.
Knowing good and well, you can't get in and I'm not coming out.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that, Pastor?
Yeah. So anybody knows me knows that I'm counseling first, right? Again, one of the biggest issues with that is the stigma, of course, attached to don't ask and don't feel.
Right.
And so, especially in our community, it's like, don't you go over there and tell nobody your business. And we've been taught that. And so we have to learn not talking. Even if you look at our children in school, are used to being taught at, not taught with. They said it growing up. You do as I say. First of all, they say you do as I say, not as I do. That was already. But then we tell our children, you don't have a say. Well, if you control their say, when they get old enough to have a say, guess what? They don't know how to have a say. And so as men who are still, and I'm just going to say this, are still little boys in men bodies, we're still having a hissy fit about what happened when we were 7. We're still struggling about when Daddy walked out and didn't come back. And so how do we deal with it? So two sides. We have to be willing to talk. And they, whoever the they is, have to be willing to listen. Some of us stop, have to do what I did and go to the graveyard and talk to the headstone. Some of us have to talk to the tennis ball. Some of us have to write in the journal and say, it hurt me when you were supposed to come get me at 6 p.m., but I didn't see you until 6 months later. We have to process those feelings. If you was mad, you was mad. Because watch this. If I don't deal with things in the man that I am, then I'll project those things onto everything that I just heard something and I'll project it onto who I'm supposed to protect. And so it has to be dealt with at some point.
I don't know how to form this in the form of a question, so
Sure
I'm
you
just going to
do.
I'm just going to give you a scenario.
Yeah.
I'll give you a scenario. We have become masters at pushing people away. We're very good at it. In fact, we're so good at it that when we make folks angry and they walk out of our lives, we are relieved. Earlier in the broadcast, you talked about that is a defense mechanism for us. Shutting down when somebody gets too close to our inner hurt. Defense mechanism. Ensuring that things don't go the way that we want them to is a defense mechanism. My question to you is, with all of these doggone defenses, how in the world are we going to do anything different? Do I need to switch you, Pastor?
I'm trying to switch to my phone.
Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I saw. I was on. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
It's still echoing. So talk about that again. You're talking about the defense mechanism that we put in place.
Correct. And the defense mechanisms is what we master. We spend more time learning ways to push people out of our life than we do ways to open our heart and get folks in. How can that we call it a rite of passage, but it is a rite of failure, if you ask me. It's a pure rite of failure. Because what we're asking people to do is not help us. We are asking people to leave us to our own devices, which are generally not going to end well. They're not going to end well at all. So the question becomes, how can we short circuit that learning process and get the help that we need?
That's a real question?
That's a real question.
That's an easy answer.
I'm listening.
We have to. You said, how can we stop learning it? The only way you learn something is when somebody's teaching.
That's all men know.
You said, that's all they know.
That's all men know.
Not all men, right? So I believe what happens, Doc, is we can grow to a certain point, but not give back what we learned. We can give back what we learned, but it not be received by who we're giving it back to, which creates this perpetual cycle of, well, they're not going to listen anyway, and all this other stuff. I choose to think in a positive light. That's what makes me a mentor.
Okay.
I work with the least of these kids who people say will never be anything. They come from a bad place. They can't be great. I don't believe it. And I don't believe it because I know what's in me. And so if I take a piece of nothing, it still has the potential to grow into what it needs to be, depending on what's planted in it. So for all of us who look at it and say, well, they can't change, we're the biggest part of the problem.
Mm.
So trying to work with men to get us to see how important it is that we get to the place where we need to be so that we can help young boys. But part of me thinks that I need to really spend more time with young men, young boys, so that they don't become the men that we become and further perpetuate into a society that needs us even the more
Mm-hmm.
and turn them away from being the men that they could be.
That makes sense. Now, you've added some again. You're going down that rabbit hole, and I don't have any common sense because I'm about to jump in there with you. So it takes relationships to do that, a genuineness, because this new generation of young men, they different. And when I say they different, they are just different than what has been. And because they are different, one of the things that we have to do is we have to become different as well. We can't use the techniques that we used 20 years ago in order to reach the folks of today. It didn't work with millennials, and it's sure enough not working with Gen Alpha. Because Gen Alpha will look at you and say, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I'm not interested. I don't want what you're selling. So they say, I'm good, and walk away from the situation. And in so doing, make sure that there's nothing that can be done. And I do mean nothing. So my question becomes, talk to me about intergenerational communication patterns or how to deal with several generations at the same time.
How deep do you want to go?
This is your show, sir. I'm just the host. You go.
So and I'm still echoing a little bit, right? I want to challenge you, and it need to be a dialogue, right?
Right?
Why do you think it's so? And I do think it's different. But why do you think it's so different?
I'm not sure. I think that the inputs of the last two generations specifically are much more complex than any generation that has gone on before. We had technology, but not really. The generation that came after us had technology, but not really. What is available to these folks now is a technological onslaught that literally bombards them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with unrelenting messages that they can either absorb or turn off or filter so that they only get certain ones. And I think that to call them the TikTok generation is accurate because they think in 30 to 45-second sound bites. And if your message is longer than 30 to 45 seconds, they're not listening to you because you talk too much. And instead of being in a place where they can say in 45 seconds, whew, that's cool, like it. Or in 45 seconds, yeah, that's not me, swipe. If you're one of those folks who is long content, then we got a problem. Because they checked out 55 minutes ago.
So I know you're asking me questions, but you just bring up a lot of questions. And the thing that I want us to think about, whether we're talking about men, whether we're talking about more seasoned people, older, whatever you want to call it is, who's really not listening?
Now that's a trick question, sir.
Oh, it is. Because our kids say something that it triggered me when you said it. They have a saying that they say called "say less." Now, in reality, "say less" is a very positive statement.
Mm-hmm.
But as an adult, when you hear "say less," you heard "shut up." But what "say less" really means is I got it. So who's really not listening? Is it the kid that's not? Because even if you think about yourself, or for myself, when somebody tells me something over and over and over again, and I think I got it, I don't need you to tell me more. I need you to let me walk it out.
Right.
And the problem with our society is we want to dictate how it's walked out. And so if we don't see it the way we said it, it's wrong.
So I'm
and my
going back
only
to
only issue with that, Doc, is they told the folks they were wrong for sitting at the lunch counter.
right.
They told the folks they was wrong for wanting to vote. So at the end of the day, we're doing the same thing that was done to us. Because we don't understand the language.
You're absolutely correct. And you bring up one of the biggest issues, which has hit every generation. They use terms and words and slang and whatever that the older generation don't understand and may not want to understand. They may basically chastise this generation saying, you need to speak proper English, you need to use correct grammar, you need to use complete sentences. When the fact of the matter is, they're not. They are quite comfortable with where they are. And, you know, I never believed in a million years that we were going to get into this rabbit hole. But as a pastor, it's kind of important that we do talk about change and how important it is, as Bruce Lee coined the phrase, to become like water, to become fluid in our movements, wherever we happen to be moving, to be okay with that. And if that means that I'm going to have to learn some emojis, then I'm going to learn some emojis. If I need to learn a new set of slang so that I can actually on the fly translate what my young folks are saying so that their voice matters. I see that as a small price to pay for inclusion and relationships. But there are some times, Pastor, that I feel that I'm the minority. I feel that I feel that I'm on this limb by myself. And that there's nobody else out here. and the folks that want to be out here and trying to saw off the limb.
Yeah, yeah. So and I know the audience is saying that echoing that's I apologize. But there's a scripture that came to mind, and it's Apostle Paul wrote in First Corinthians, I become like son to win all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what it reminds me of is my good brother, Dr. Martin Luther King, in the stories I heard of him and how he ministered. His ministry was going in the pool hall, rolling up his sleeves, and playing a game of pool.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the basketball court, playing basketball. I become some to win all. And in this dispensation, and as this group of people gets older, I think the biggest thing we can do is remember when that person came and took us under their wing when they didn't understand.
Right.
And a lot of it also has to do with just basic communication. Sometimes I'll tell a kid, what did that mean? I don't understand. Not why do you talk like that? Why do you wear your hair? Because here's the thing, and there's a quote that people say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's right.
At the end of the day, the young men I work with, because of me listening, not because of me talking, they're gonna know how much I care. And when I say listen, I think it's important to say my listening don't always have an answer or a solution. Sometimes just listen, just to understand who they are, how to hear it, why they think that. And so I think everybody, I can't make younger people listen. I can't make older people listen, but I can throw it out there. I think that people, period, just need to listen to each other.
So, answer a question for me, Pastor. What is the responsibility of the church as it relates to demonstrating an effective role model for men?
Is that a trick question?
Of course not.
So the church itself is based on a model of discipleship, which is literally Paul even said, follow me as I follow Christ. Jesus turned around and said, you see me do nothing unless my Father tells. It's all about example and mentor. I think one of the issues with the church is we've been bad examples. And we've had bad examples. And it's further perpetuated through the years and been passed down. And then even when we have our young preachers, young pastors, who start pastoring early, being put into a male man role before they're ready for it. Begin to be bad examples. And so when we look at how Jesus lived, because we always say, well, what would Jesus do, right? We'll say that, but we don't do what he would do. We don't forget. We don't listen. We don't love. We don't. All the things that he would do, we don't do. But that is the true essence of it. Discipleship is the true essence of it. And guess what? You duplicate who you are.
Now, is that a good thing, a bad thing, or a thing?
That's a thing. Because whatever you are, that's what you're going to duplicate. if you got bad seeds, you don't get good fruit.
That's good, sir. So, So many questions. So many questions. So many questions. Did the church decide did the church decide that it's not okay to have positive male mentors?
Did the church decide?
And here's it, let me couch that. The age of the deacon is waning and disappearing. The age of the trustee is waning and disappearing. The age of the elders, and I'm not speaking of the ministerial elders, but I'm just talking about the seniors in the church who represented wisdom, are disappearing. They're going away. What happened?
That's a good question. I think it all starts with the fact that we're people, right? So we start at the fact that we're a church, or that we're a ministry, or that we're a deacon, or we're an elder. But I had one pastor tell me, and it was funny when he said it, but it was real. He said, people are people all over the world. And what I really think is happening is the church is being exposed for who we are. We look at it like something new is happening. Nothing new is happening. It's just being exposed for what it is. And so the other side of that is the real Christ in us. It's time for that to rise up. It's really an opportunity for God to be who He is. It's an opportunity, and the scripture says it simply like this. It says that the time will come when it'll separate the wheat from the tare.
Right?
So we shouldn't get upset when we see it waning away. We should understand that prophecy is being fulfilled when it's waning. Because the Bible tells us that this is what's going to happen. And it's unfortunate because we've had people in title and we had people by position. But that don't mean that they was good news. And so now, again, I think we're seeing the fruit of the seed that was planted. Whether that was planted by us or whether it was planted by someone else, that doesn't mean it was planted. Because the other part of the scripture says that while men slept, men crept in unaware and planted weeds and planted tares.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I go down that rabbit hole, then that means that the men who are supposed to be the protectors and the providers, even back in Dick and other places, weren't on their posts. So what it says to men now is, if we don't want to end up like that generation get up, then we have to stand up and be on our post.
Can we actually do that?
Yes. And the reason why we can do that is because we can argue and debate about. It's like when somebody says, "Well, I didn't have," right, or I didn't have it in my life to do this. But when I believe in God, I know that God implanted something in me called being a man.
Mm-hmm.
Which means even if I didn't have, the reason why I'm looking for it in another man is because it's in me. If it wasn't in me, I wouldn't be able to find it when I look for it in someone else. But the fact that it's in me gives me something to reach out for. Which gives me hope that that man in me, or that man in him, or that man in you has the ability to stand up. So the answer is yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go into the mud a little bit. So please forgive me.
I got my good shirt on, so my wife got this shirt.
Please forgive me. Why are we not teaching the basics of manhood as a component of discipleship?
a good question. I don't know if I had an answer to that. And I think part of the answer is, and even as a pastor, I realize this, right? We can't do everything. I do think the church should be self-sufficient. The church should teach about manhood, womanhood, finances, health, all of those things. But we put a whole lot of pressure on the church to be everything to everyone. When the reality is, my kids go to school more than they go to church.
True.
So at the end of the day, I do think the church should lead the way in that. And even look at the old church, especially the old black church, in the civil rights time, there was pressure that came from the church, even on political movements, or pressure that came, for certain things to happen. But the church can't be everything. The church is a part of the whole, part of the community. And that's probably the reason why when something happens in the church, everybody's church hurt and blame the church, because the church was put on this pedestal as if it wasn't just people that was in the building.
And I don't want to put the church on a pedestal, but I do want us to get back to a place where the church once was, which was a leader in the community.
Facts.
Because the community looked to the church for guidance, for leadership, for a pattern, for shelter, for safety. The people looked at the church for that. Now, that by and large is no longer the case. And I think that many communities are still smarting from what I call the COVID battle, where they were trying to figure out who was going to lead the fight to say something's wrong. But there was no leader in that. And the number of people of color that died as a result of that pandemic was inexcusable. And it didn't seem as if there was a voice that came up out of that said, this is inexcusable. It wasn't there. And again, I'm not trying to throw rocks at any entity, but I know that from our experience, we have known the church to be that entity that steps up in times of pressure, that steps up in times of turmoil, that steps up in times of crisis as the rallying point for the community to come and get direction on what to do. And again, it's not fair. And I'm saying that in advance of this question. It's not fair to look at a Pastor G and say, you need to lead us. He'll lead you where I don't know where to go.
Yeah, so can I say this, Doc?
Of course.
And this is going to sound might sound rough. You can't challenge the king when you're eating at his table. I'll say that.
Say more.
The church, I don't want to say too much about that. Eats at the table with the king. Sometimes even eats at the table with the enemy. How do you challenge who's feeding? So when we think about political agenda, we think about all of these things that have been interwoven into our society to cause men, especially African American men, to be weak. To cause some African American get caught up with certain substances and certain things. Some pastors are sitting at the table. They're not trying to start drug programs or trying to make sure young men stay out of jail. So how do I lead against sentences that are unfair when I'm in bed with the people that making the sentences unfair? That happens. And even in this last, and I know we're not talking politics, but even in this last election, regardless of what side you are on, I think the church was too involved. Our involvement should be with God, with prayer, with fasting, with coming up with things for our children, coming up with things for our congregants. We're praying for whoever is the president, whoever's in power, not trying to dictate and decide in their lives.
Oh, sir.
I'm back out of there.
No, sir. No, sir. Oh, no, sir.
I'm out here now.
Mm. I'm perplexed. Let me
Not
say
you.
I'm perplexed. I am. Me. I'm perplexed. I'm perplexed
Why are you
because
perplexed?
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you. I'm perplexed because we want everything and often put in nothing. We want to grow, but we don't want to put in the work.
Sure.
We want knowledge, but we don't want to study. We want a robust prayer life, but don't wake me up before 7 a.m. In reality, that's not gonna work.
Right.
It's not. It's not gonna work. So hard sayings, and I'm glad you opened the door to that. If you were going to give the men on this call what I call real knowledge, if you're going to keep it 100 with these brothers and the women who love them, what's foundational for them to take stock of themselves? What are some of the foundational truths that you would share with them?
Yeah, so one truth is in the saying of truth, right? There's a saying that says, "To thine own self be true." And I noticed a long time ago, as men, a lot of times the truth is embedded so deep in us in those hard places, in those hurtful places, that we don't want to go there. So the hard truth I would give is, you got to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And I use an example. I told a young man that I know one time, this young man, when he was a baby, his mother had thrown him in the trash.
Mm.
He struggled with things through life. He struggled with identity issues. He struggled with all these things. That don't just go away. Just because the person died, or just because you're no longer living in it. You still have to visit that place and deal with those things. And confront those things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I learned, study sociology, is conflict produces change.
So very.
And so a lot of times, and as men, conflict sounds different. Conflict sounds like fighting or now even pulling guns out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really what conflict is for men is to be challenged. And so the biggest thing that we can do as men is be open to the challenge, especially from other men.
Right.
and to walk in the truth of that, right? And to be open to that, and to be open to whether we bringing correction through love to the men that we say we care about.
Mm-hmm. So very true. So very true. So when we become true to ourselves, and this is about to be a paid political announcement, it is. No, it is. Both for you and I. Men don't know how to navigate that path by themselves. Men are scared to navigate that path by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And men have been hurt horribly when they trusted somebody as a guide to help them navigate that path. Now, you add that trifecta into where we are right now, and I am sure that there are many a man on this call, whether they are in the comments or not, who are saying, hey, nah, dog, not me. You already burned me once. You're not going to burn me again. You already had me come to the men's group, and the men's group prayed, and the next thing I know, my business is on Facebook.
Right, right.
Talk to the men about confidentiality, protection, and trust.
Yeah, yeah. So again, being a counselor, right? Confidentiality is everything. Tired of the word HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about groups, I think about trust that's involved in being in any type of relationship. Trust is all I have. Now you said about not being able to trust in the past. Here's one of the things I've noticed, and it's very weird. People who have trust issues trust people they should, and don't trust people they should.
That's right.
It's the weirdest thing. But when it comes to being confidential, I always look at it in the sense of it's kind of reciprocal. Like if I know yours and you know mine, then that should lock us in right there. But that requires us both to be not just trusting, but also truthful.
Absolutely.
But the other thing I tell anybody is you have to make sure that in any relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, friendship, or counseling relationship, I don't have to dump everything out at one time. You know, in the church we say try the spirit, by the spirit, see if it's of God. But sometimes you gotta throw some stuff out just to see if you can trust. And that's okay too. Because we do have to learn to trust, especially when it comes to issues of our emotions in our heart, whether it be with male counterparts or female.
And that's the way that it should be. That's absolutely the way.
Idealistically.
Idealistically. Couple more questions and I'm going to let you loose because I know good and well the hour is growing late. Number one, in a perfect world, how would you train young men as they progressed? If you had an academy, G's Academy for Men, what would it look like?
Well, I would love to work with adolescents, age 11 to 17, really with just core skills, life skills, communication, conflict resolution, self-esteem, those core issues, right? It's just like being in the gym. Like I said, same as club, I really started a business to coach the mind. But when you go to the gym, you gym the core first.
Right.
And so those are core issues that need to be strengthened first so that everything around it can be built on. And so that's what my program will look.
That's beautiful. And that would not be me if I did not say this. So, for all of the men on the call and the women who love them, I need a call to action. What would you say to them at this juncture so that they would take this seriously?
So what I would say to him, you probably be like, "That's it, right?" I have something I say. It's simply, "Let's go." And unfortunately, I realize that when I give a call to action, "Let's go," everybody be coming. And so the second part of that is, whoever ride in the train is going to the station. And after I say, "Let's go," we're going. And that's not to discredit or discount anybody who's not ready. But at this point in my life, I'm looking for people who are ready to level up.
Mm-hmm.
And some people just need that. So I literally would say those two words. Let's.
And if they ask the question, where are we going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm a pastor and I'm a preacher, and it's hard for me to get away from the word. I find it amazingly awesome that when Jesus found the disciples, he said two words: "Follow me."
He did.
And people get excited because they followed him. Right? But what they don't realize is that he proved himself first. He helped them to get something they couldn't get. So before I say let's go, I got to be able to meet a need.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, the mentee chases what they see in the mentor. So when a mentor shows up, and that need might not be fish in the middle of work. That need might be that encouraging word that ignited something on the inside of them and helped them to live again. When I say let's go, they coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was no other voice that was able to spark them and get them up. So at that point, you ain't worried about where we go.
That's true.
You worried about getting what's on the inside of that person that said, "Let's go."
That's very true. Ooh, that's good. That's very good, sir. Very, very good. So, a couple of things. Number one, thank you so much, Pastor. You
Thanks for
have
having me.
you have blessed my heart more than you'll ever know. Um, this is not gonna be the last time that you're here. You know that.
Yeah.
Because there are about 14 other subjects that I need to pick your brain on, and this is a
Oh Lord.
wonderful platform for me to do it on. So I'm waiting for the time that we can go ahead and chop it up on some other subjects more than anything else. And the one thing that I found out about social media, it's not always the original post because folks are busy, but it's the y'all need to hear this
Yeah.
that comes later when people actually begin to have these conversations. Um, Starting Monday next week, the 5th, we are going to be starting our 21-day um, shift into purpose series. And basically, shift stands for sitting with yourself and Jesus, hearing the Father's voice, investing in your purpose, forgiving offense, and taking accountability. All of the things that men struggle with. And I do mean all of the things that men struggle with. So for 21 days, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be taking it apart. We're going to be seeing what this looks like in many different aspects of life. And the goal is at the end of our journey together, men will be further down the road than they are right now. That's the goal. That's where we are. And I believe that God is going to meet us at our time of sharing, at our time of learning, at our time of being vulnerable, not necessarily to one another, but to ourselves. And once we do that, it's going to be easy. So if you're interested in the shift, just go out to purposerefinedbyfire.com and it'll tell you everything that you need to know in order to get that done. So if there is, I'm always going to do this, Pastor, you have the last say. Is there anything else that you want to say before we go ahead and end for the evening?
I'm just grateful for the platform and the opportunity to share tonight. And I probably should also say that more discussions are needed. Right? I mean, we get around and talk about foolishness or even sports or whatever. But just to talk about the needs that men have. And so kudos for conversation. And I believe this so I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you again. And for those who are generally here on Monday nights for Mason Mondays, thank you so much for your support. It is so appreciated. And as I am beginning to say of late, make sure that your life is refined by fire. We'll see you next week.
We all want to be happy, but the majority of us have no idea what to do. See, the Japanese have a concept called ikigai, which roughly translates into a reason for being. You need to have a purpose for being here. But this is easier said than done because there are 4 components that you need to check off in order to achieve ikigai. Now, the interesting thing about this Japanese formula is that you can tell where you are in life and what you need to work on by looking at the components you have so far. If all you have is something that you love and are good at, then you have what's called a passion. On the other hand, if you have something that you love and you can see how the world needs it, then you have what's called a mission. Now, if you're someone who has something you get paid well for and are good at, then you have what most people in the world have, which is a profession. And finally, if you get paid well and it's something that you know can help the world, then you have what's called a vocation. You need to be spending your time doing something that you love, that you can get better at, that pays well, and that the world needs. Without all 4, you will always feel like you're missing something inside of you.
Follow us for more helpful tips.